Hi, Angela. Welcome to the Buy, Grow, Sell podcast.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure indeed. It's lovely to meet you, and I'm appreciative of you making the time to come on the show anyway.
Oh, thank you.
I know we're going to talk about your business, Philosophy, which you
Yes.
founded and ultimately exited. But maybe I could kick it over to you and get you to give us a little bit of background, maybe what kind of led to starting that business.
Yeah, of course. Well, like all things, it was not how I planned it. My undergrad, it was in computer science here in Colorado. And I moved to California, worked in the high tech industry, and learned quickly that I was not a coder. I am a marketer, I'm a brander. And I loved people and products and things. And my passion at the time was really fitness. And I learned pretty early on that I love creating things that don't exist. And so it just happened by chance that I didn't have a fitness journal that I liked. All of them were ugly. They were all the same page for like 300 pages, like super ugly and boring. No offense. Uh, but I was like, I need to create something better. And at the time, I was in my MBA program at UC Irvine and started working on this project for this product called Fitbook. And everybody in the program was working on these really high tech ventures, saving the world, and I'm over here with my journal. And it was kind of interesting because nobody really believed in it, but I believed wholeheartedly. I think that's the most beautiful thing about young entrepreneurs is, gosh, sometimes it takes that naivety to really to get something going. So that was what ultimately led me to creating that product in 2007, and ended up launching that company in 2008. But like I said, I was in marketing and I was running a marketing agency at the time because I really loved the high tech space and marketing. But this passion product was kind of the thing that kept me up at night, would work on it wee hours of the morning, and ultimately launched a company in 2008, making no money, as you know how that goes, starting a company. So that's kind of the background behind, the
Yeah.
idea, what inspired me, and ultimately what led to starting the company.
That's cool. I'm just hearing these, the checklist of the typical entrepreneur, and I'm starting to tick boxes here. Loves creating things, diverse sort of range of interests. Saw a problem, often related to how they're living.
Yeah.
Wanted to solve it. People didn't believe in it. I'm
Yes,
like,
it really is a
yep,
checklist. And those are the things I think that drive entrepreneurs, right? I always say it's
yeah.
a balance of like, you've got to take constructive criticism, but at the same time, if you don't believe in it more than everybody else doesn't, good luck, because it's tough out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for every, there's a lot of business owners out there who aren't necessarily on the creative entrepreneurial kind of end of that
Yeah.
spectrum. But I do think that every business owner understands that whole piece of in your history, there's always going to be a point somewhere where you're kind of going, do I really want to keep doing this? Or, geez,
Yeah.
this is hard. And if you don't have a bit of passion and a bit of drive and a bit of something other than just money or whatever else driving
Yeah.
you, then most of us probably wouldn't make it, right?
Oh, if I did it for the money, Simon, I would have quit in like year one. It
Yeah.
was for sure not the money, was not the motivating factor. In fact, it never was for me. I never thought I would exit, by the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and I've heard that plenty of times too. So it's one of my favorite little sayings when I'm chatting to business owners. I talk to a lot of business owners every day, but I do meet people who go, I never want to exit. I love my business. I'm just going to do this forever. And I'm like, okay, you do understand you exit one day, right? Like whether
Yeah.
you like it or not, you kind of got a plan for it or you get carried out in a box.
Well,
So
yeah, and we can talk about that, but for me, it was like, okay, well, so am I going to do this till I'm 80? I don't know, because that's a trajectory I'm on right now. I ran the business for 10 years, and there was part of me that's like, well, I could do that, but it's either that or sometimes exiting, you exit good or you exit bad. It's one or the other. It's never in the middle. So,
yeah, and like you said before about plans and things not going to plan, I should
yeah,
say. You can. I'm a big advocate. Plan what your ideal exit should look like, but geez, build in a way that gives you options because
yeah.
nothing ever pans out exactly the way you think it will.
Certainly not in business anyway, or life.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, can you talk me through the earlier years of the business? Like,
Yeah,
what was that like? Were you on your own? Did you have a business partner? Did you,
yeah.
what point did you have a product that you were able to start selling?
Yeah, I had one investor in the business, angel investor early on. He was a friend. He wanted to buy a marketing company and have me run it. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I have an idea for this product. And so it was a classic cocktail napkin. We went to this restaurant in Orange County, Italian lunch, and I wrote on a napkin how much money I needed. Of course, I always needed more than that. But, that was the initial conversation. He's like, okay, let's do this. And so he was my business partner, and wasn't just an angel investor, but a good friend. So, whenever we got a big order, one time we had like 1,000 orders in one day, we're both out in the garage, like putting them together and shipping them out. So he really was a partner in a lot of ways, from just helping me get off the ground to eventually being an important part of securing additional capital and things like that. But yeah, it was just very little money to get it started. We had a product in year one. So we launched in January of 2008. And then we actually went to this World Fitness Conference idea in July of 2008 and showed up there with our products. And I had my business partner at the time. I had my graphic designer, who's still one of my very best friends, and my mom. And it was us. That was our trade show. And on either side of us was an application of some sort. It was these apps that don't even exist anymore, to be honest with you, but digitizing fitness. And here I am with my book, and I'm like, well, it has a pen, and it's 12 weeks and it helps you reach your goals, and people are just looking at me like you're crazy. And it was so coincidental and such a blessing that on the day that we launched the product, Kaiser Permanente had just launched a research study that writing down what you eat and your goals increases your weight loss success by double. And people
Yeah.
were flocking. It was amazing. And so that was kind of the kickoff of the product. And flocking meaning, I mean, I was profitable in year one. That's because I didn't pay myself a dime. It's easy to say you're
Yeah.
profitable if you're
Yeah.
not taking any money out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was early days. It was schlepping books to trade shows for years. I
Yeah.
had one product for the first 3 years. Funny enough, when I sold the company, that product still made up about 80% of our revenue. I call it,
Cool.
entrepreneurs are squirrels, like I want to create more, I want to do more. We created over 50 SKUs in the time that we grew the business, but that's still that one product was our bread and butter, that flagship product. Um,
Yeah.
the biggest, I had three goals when I started the business, and it was I want to be in Target, I want to be in 24-hour fitness, and I want to be on Oprah. And I accomplished two of those three. And that was really, I think the 24-hour fitness was a big deal. But then, what happened to 24-hour fitness? So that was kind of crazy how we sold our products into there, but then they got acquired. But Target really was the game changer for us. We approached, we meaning I, because I was the salesperson for all 10 years. It was
Yep.
just how it worked. I tried to hire salespeople. It never really went well. But I had so much passion. Even this many years later, I still get passionate talking about the product and the company and the brand because I believe so much in it. It was my heart and soul. And so I approached Target and I said, hey, first of all, it was really hard to get a buyer to look at my product, but sent one in the mail. He didn't get it. Sent another one in a red box with like tissue and made it look all cute. And he said, I was ready for him to tell me you're crazy. And he didn't. He gave me a 100-store test. 2 months later, we moved to a 500-store test. And by September of 2011, we were in all Target stores nationwide. So that was kind of the beginning of
Wow.
our retail boom, so to speak.
Nice. Nice. Well,
Yeah.
nothing gives you more confidence than than a bigger order from a big company like Target. But
Yeah.
I should state just for the record, awesome achieving two out of those three goals. Clearly, Oprah's missing out. She
I
obviously doesn't know
mean,
what she's.
that
No,
ship
I mean,
sailed,
come on.
Oprah. So, I don't know what to say.
I'll put a call through to her
Yeah, I'll
later.
put a
You know,
call.
it's all
All
right. Yeah,
good.
yeah. Let me ask you, how did it feel that first conference? You've
Yeah.
created a product. You're putting yourself out there, really, I guess, on this open, event. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
really, entrepreneurs, you're opening yourself up to criticism,
Yeah.
really. I mean, aren't you? Like, how
Yeah.
did that feel?
Oh gosh, it's funny. I'm actually doing a talk tomorrow night, so I have a picture of my first trade show. Any slide, first slide is that because it brings me back to those beginning days to kind of put me in that mode of what it feels like to be an entrepreneur again. And I was just sheer excitement. I was a little nervous, but I've always been confident. in whatever I'm doing because I believe so much in it. I can't do anything that I don't believe in. But of course, I had, people coming out to me, well, do you have an app? I could rapid fire tell you all the reasons why apps don't work. I mean, I was just a little spicy, and I still am. That's bode me well. That bodes well. I had a ton of personal trainers because this was a conference for personal trainers. Because my idea was I don't want to go to the consumer in the beginning. I want to go to the people that work with the consumer. So go to personal trainers, gyms. I started doing wholesale a lot. That was how we got into sporting goods stores, gyms, and personal trainers and things like that. But personal trainers would come up to me and be like, well, I created a journal. And my sassy response was, well, where is it? And it's
Yeah.
because, and the reason I told that story is because I tell people all the time an idea
Yeah.
doesn't really matter if it never comes to fruition. An idea,
Yeah.
I would say, is a dime a dozen. So if you don't do it, who cares?
Yeah, I look totally agree with that, and it's. I've always found in the businesses we've run too. Yeah, my wife and I have run every business together, and
That's
we've
awesome.
always been very forthcoming with information. We share fairly
Yeah.
openly what people might suggest is quite confidential information, even about how we kind of go about doing things. And
Yeah.
and I always get, even to this day, I get asked the question like, "Aren't you worried that these people are just going to rip you
Steal
off,
your
take your
idea.
information?" And every time now it makes me smile because I go, man, like if it was that easy,
Yeah.
everybody would be doing it, right? Like
Yeah.
anybody can take my information and think that they can go and start a business, but then they will find, like we did,
Yes.
that there's a 5-year grind to get it to the point where it starts doing anything meaningful.
Most people
So
give up before they even get started, in my opinion.
totally.
I'm sure you get this a lot, and sorry to any young entrepreneurs that have asked if they can pick my brain, but I have this annoyance with that term because I'm like, well, pick my brain means you want to gain expertise from me, which is fine, but what have you done? So I always kind of turn it back to them. Okay, well, give me a list of the 10 things you would love to learn from our conversation. Because what I've found is most people are, number one, they're either wanting your expertise for free or they want your money. And neither of those, in my opinion, they should be earned. So I think part of the beautiful part of being an entrepreneur is I had to figure it all out on my own. That does not mean I didn't have people that spoke life into my business. That I had board members that were so helpful. I had retailers that gave me a shot. But I did not wait around for someone to tell me how to do it. And I think that is the one trait of an entrepreneur that is absolutely critical is figure it out. Just
Yep.
figure it out. And if you're waiting for someone to tell you, waiting for someone to give you the money, if you're waiting for someone to tell you where you can manufacture that or who the connections are, it's going to be an uphill battle because no one's going to hand it to you. In fact, you're going to have everybody telling you why it won't work, not why it will. So I
Yep.
think that tenacity is like so pivotal. And if somebody can't come back to me with the things they'd like to learn from our conversation, I know they're not that serious. So I've just saved them a
Yeah.
ton of money. You know what I mean? I feel like they owe me now.
Well, absolutely. I mean, just in that little engagement, there's a lot of lessons in
A
there,
lot of
right?
lessons.
So,
Yeah.
I think all of us need to. I mean, it's too easy to get caught up in things these days, even get distracted by stuff. And as you say, it's really making internal excuses as to the reason why you're not doing
Yeah.
stuff too. So,
And that said, just so I
um,
don't come across as a complete like hard, I spend my time mentoring startups now and working with young entrepreneurs, and it is my passion. But it's all under the guise of like it's something I love doing. But
yeah,
people that come and want kind of that, well, how'd you do it? Well, do you have connections? Well, who gave you money? Like those kind of questions. I'm like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, they're asking the wrong questions,
Yep,
right? And that's the
absolutely.
thing. I mean, I've been fortunate. I've had many mentors in my life from when I was a very young lad. Um, but I think the role I see universally is that good mentors are able to hold up a mirror
Yep.
and make you take a different kind of look at yourself.
Yeah.
And good mentors and teachers don't tell you what to do. They help you learn by looking inward and looking at things around you and perspective and helping you come up with the idea or
Versus
take
handing
ownership
it to
of the.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
I
right. That's
believe
right.
it.
Otherwise, if it's just given to you, it's worthless, right?
Exactly. And I also think that there's this innate X factor that entrepreneurs have, and so I think in early conversations you can tell. I mean, like I said, I work with a lot of startups now, and I think you can just tell the ones that have it.
Yep.
And those excite me. I'm like, all right, what are you doing? What are you working on? Let's have
Yeah.
coffee. Let's talk about this. Let's get this going. And I'm more excited about that. And those are the people that often don't ask, right? Because you're just like, oh, you got it. So
Yeah.
anyway, side
Yeah.
conversation, but yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. No, I love it. I love it. It's from time to time, my wife Shanti and I, we get approached by people saying, "Oh, we'd love to work with you guys, or we'd like to do something, or we've got this idea for a business. Would you be interested in coming in?" And it's interesting. Often, I'm always really curious because a lot of these people, most of them, in fact, have never run their own business, and I'm always a little bit cautious of people coming straight out of corporate and thinking they're just going to jump into a business.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, I did some time in corporate.
You did some time.
I,
That's a good way to put it.
yeah, yeah.
You did your time
Everybody in
in
our
corporate.
Yeah, that's it, right? And it was well, we always laugh. Everybody in our firm is a corporate escapee, right?
Yeah.
We sometimes in life, I think you've got to work in an environment to truly understand what you don't want for the rest of your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And I did lots of little things as a kid to make money, and everything. I'd climb in the mucky canals and get golf balls and clean them and
Yes.
sell them on the. I did everything you could imagine to make money as a kid
Me
because I was
too.
fascinated by it.
I
And yeah,
sold
right.
pickles.
And
Okay, Simon, I sold pickles.
nice.
I
I've got a
know.
great pickle idea that we could. I'll have to tell it to you over a glass of wine sometime. But
Yes. Yes. Pickle venture.
but I do. I'm always a little bit curious and cautious about people coming out of corporate because they're not used to the idea of having to start and run a business and grind it out and do the hard work.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're lazy or they're afraid of hard work.
No.
It's just a completely different scenario when you're doing it with somebody else's money. You're massively resourced. You have minions who do things for you. And to be honest, it's actually my wife Shanti who constantly asks the question to them.
Yeah.
So, what do you see yourself doing? Like,
Yeah.
what is your role?
Yeah.
And are you prepared to like hustle, man? Like you've got to,
Yeah.
and that doesn't mean doing the wrong thing by anybody. It means like you've got to be willing to do what it takes. And do you
Yeah.
have that in you?
I agree. And I think a lot of times what I hear in hearing people talk about why they want to start their own business is they have an idea and they think they can do it better. And I'm like, great, awesome. They want flexibility. They want freedom. They want to kind of work and do what they want. They don't want to be able to go on vacation. I just laugh because I'm like, I ran the business for 10 years. It was a grind all 10 years. And then I go and marry a software entrepreneur, and I'm like,
Yep.
I can relate to it because it's a grind. And I'm like, whenever people say they want to make a ton of money, go on vacation, work when they want, I'm like, then do not start your own business. Take your PTO, keep your 401k because it is hard. It is really, really
Yeah.
hard. And every day is something new that is completely out of your control. But
Yeah.
there is a small group of people in this world that are excited by that. And those are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, I love it. I love it. Yeah, so I keep saying if it was easy, everyone would do it, and if everyone was
Exactly.
doing it, it'd be worth nothing, right?
You're
So,
right. You're right.
um, I actually went to this. I went to this awards night once, and a friend of mine, Jemima, she was getting this award. She got up there to accept it, and the room's full of a lot of people doing startups who are, they're out there. They've
Yeah,
put themselves on the line. They're
of
having a
course.
go. Some of them were very successful. Some of them were trying to make it work, whatever. But and I'm probably going to butcher her little
Her
part of her
speech.
speech here, but she got up there. She goes, it's a shout out to all you entrepreneurs in the room. You're the only people in the world that I know that'll give up a 40-hour a week job paying you 80 grand a year for an 80-hour week paying you
Paying you
40
40
grand a
grand a
year.
year.
Right?
It is so true. It is. So funny story, early days, I was 27 at the time in grad school, had just landed my first six-figure job. And my mom, I come from a super small town. We owned a donut shop in town. We were from very humble beginnings, I'll put it that way. And so to my mom, the fact that I had just got a 6-figure job that had benefits and a 401k and security. And I had a great title and all this. And I worked there 3 months. And I was like, Mom, I'm leaving to start my own marketing agency.
But you already
She
had the
about passed
dream.
out. Like she was just like, "No, what are you doing?" And you're right. You're right. I mean, granted, I landed clients pretty quick because I'd been in the industry, but still, I was not making that in my first year. But the reason I did it is I wanted the flexibility to work on this other business at night. I had a path. Um, I don't know if it was a path at the time, and my mom would definitely tell you it wasn't. But later on, she was like, "You're so brave. You're so brave."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Brave,
yeah.
stupid. I'm not sure which one, but it worked.
It's like nervousness and excitement. I think it's the same chemical reaction, just somewhere there's a fine line
There's a
between,
very fine line. Very fine line. We
yeah,
walk it.
totally, totally. I love it. I think I'd say my parents are the same thing. They came from a generation of you kind of get a really good job, you hang on to it for life,
Yeah.
and that was obviously radically changing as certainly I was growing up and you were growing up, but it just I think the first time I left corporate and banking and all this sort of stuff, went, now we're going to start a business, and everyone in the family went, you say what?
What?
Like what?
Why? Why? Yeah.
what?
I
What
was
do you mean?
actually, that's a funny story. I was actually the first one to graduate from college in my family. And that was a big deal, especially where we were from. Um, but I was raised in family business. Like I mentioned, my dad had a bakery growing up. My grandfather, still at the age of 87, has a car dealership that he's owned for going on
Wow.
65 years. So this entrepreneurship kind of runs in my blood. And I do credit those early days of, I started working at my dad's donut shop when I was 8. I started little businesses within these businesses. So I had a full-time lemonade stand, and I had a pickle stand, and I had a fudge stand. I mean, I had all these little things I was doing. Plus I had jobs there.
Yeah.
I think once I got to corporate America, it was so overrated. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like this is boring. And does anybody really, sorry, this sounds off. Like, what does everybody do? There's just a lot of
Yes.
people and I don't know what's happening. And I felt like, and I think there is a part of entrepreneurs, we love control. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but when I would see things happening, I worked for a startup. It was a tech startup later on after I left corporate America. And so I worked for a few startups before I had my own. But it drove me crazy watching a CEO that treated his employees horribly.
Yeah.
I'm a Enneagram 8. So to me, I'm like, no, like I'm respectful, but I would talk back to authority because I'm like, this is not right, which does not go over well, by the way, with a boss. So, I
Yeah.
just realized this isn't cut out for me, and maybe I won't make it, but I'm going to for sure try my hardest. But I would rather, if I didn't make it, for it to be on my shoulders, not someone else's.
Yeah. Amen. I hear you, what you're saying about the control element. I hear because it's
Not good in
I
all
always
areas of your life, Simon. Not good.
no, it's not. And I think, one thing about being an entrepreneur too is you get enough smackdowns that it teaches you enough humility to know sometimes when to listen.
It is the most
Um,
humbling thing in the entire world. Like running your own business is like people think you're like cocky or confident. I'm like, no, I just learned to smack this look on my face because most of the time you feel beat up. Most of the time you just got told no 5 times before you had your morning coffee, and you still have to show up on your team meeting and tell them why we're going to crush it. And then you're like, I
yeah,
don't know how I'm
totally.
making payroll next week, but we're going to do this.
Yeah,
So all the
for
growing
sure.
pains.
For sure. Oh man. Yes, I feel it. I absolutely feel it. I really feel the granularity of it. It's yeah, that's cool. So talk to me a little bit more about philosophy. Like, what was the pathway? I mean, 2008. I mean, I know you exited at around sort of 2000. I think it was 18.
18. Yep.
So, what I don't like about a lot of podcasts is that they kind of go, oh, yeah, I started in 2008 and I exited in 2018. And, oh, yeah, it all just sounds like this, success
Oh.
story, overnight
Mm-mm.
add water. Clearly, you've demonstrated that it wasn't like that. But what was the pathway from
Yeah.
2008? Like, did the company grow? How many staff did you end up having? What did all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff look like?
Yeah. So, we always ran really lean, and that was what I wanted. I didn't, my team called me their for employer. Like there was, a really close knit team. By the time I sold the company, there was only, I think, 6 of us.
Yep.
And we grew. I mean, my first assistant that helped me with orders was my cousin. who was in
Yep.
college that needed like a part-time gig, and I could afford to pay her like $10 an hour at the time. I don't even remember now, but it wasn't anything glamorous. As we started developing products, it really was Target. First we landed Sports Chalet, 24-hour fitness, like I said, the sporting goods and kind of gyms. We were doing wholesale orders. But Target really was the game changer as far as them giving us a shot, because what I did from there was I really hung our hat on Target. So when I tried to get a meeting with CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and I had international distributors by the time I sold, it was, we are one of the top 5 selling SKUs in the fitness aisle at Target.
Nice.
I've just always said that, sales speak louder than any marketing ever will. You can make it pretty, you can have testimonials, you can have all this stuff, but if things aren't selling, the business is not going to go anywhere. And so Target really was a game changer for us. We went on to land CVS, Walgreens, like I mentioned, Walmart later on. Those were really our largest accounts. We were in Target Canada. We know what happened there. And then international was something I dabbled in, but I learned quickly that it was just, I wasn't making the kind of money for the volume that I was doing. And so I kind of pulled back on international distribution. But, by the time I sold the business, we were in 16,000 stores nationwide.
Wow.
We had a really strong online direct to consumer business as well. We would launch products there, see what worked before we would take those to retailers, and vice versa. Retailers would come to us. And I mean, I was famous for going into a meeting with Target and asking them what they're needing. And actually, the funniest one was Walgreens. They're like, we really need like a fitness calendar. And I'm like, awesome. Yeah, we have one. Can have that for you. So I go back to my team and they're like, Angela, we do not have one. I'm like, I know, we will. And do you know how long it takes to create a fitness calendar? 365 days with 365 tips and 365 inspirations. And it was literally 3 weeks of nonstop grind. My graphic designer, one of my best friends, like, we were like literally on the computer together every day for hours.
Yeah.
And we launched that product in, I think it was almost 7,000 stores in Walgreens.
Yeah.
And that ended up being a top seller. So,
That's
I
so
always
cool.
say yes and figure it out later, because otherwise someone
Yeah.
else is going to do it.
Yeah, you just ticked another one of those boxes on my entrepreneur list. If someone's willing to buy it, I'm willing to create it.
Oh, I mean, like I mentioned, we don't need to go into it, but my husband's story of how he started his software company was the same. I mean, it was a very, very large company that you would know. And he said yes, had a purchase order for like a $500,000 project, and he didn't have it yet. So, I mean, it's just such and he delivered. That's the thing. I mean, I always say,
Yeah.
if you cannot deliver, don't make promises you can't keep. But most entrepreneurs are
Yeah.
crazy enough to make it happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do they say?
A sucker's
How
born
do
every
you
minute.
well, yeah, I was going to say, how do you eat an elephant? Well, obviously one bite at a time, but
Yeah.
take your first bite and then chew like crazy, right? Like
Yeah,
it just
yeah. You keep going. And so that was, I would say that we had a really strong brand. We had customers that loved our products. I would be blown away by customers that would post pictures on Instagram or Facebook, and it would be like their collection of like 30 or 40 fit books that they'd been using. And we had one of our users, they all became friends because I was so invested in their lives. And one of them was on in the New York Post for having lost 80 pounds and having to stop taking her heart medication because she used our products. And so we would sell these stories of just real life. And I think in an age
beautiful.
where, again, I mentioned I'm an 8, I'm a charger. I want to change the world. And so in my own little way. And I was so sick of seeing everything out there that was talking about, fit and skinny and lose weight overnight. And I'm like, that is such a load of crap. And part of
Yeah,
what I forgot about my story was I had battled eating disorders for about 14 years. And so this was something that was in me that was just like, gosh, this is not a healthy way to live life. And
yeah,
it was over time, journaling actually helped me get through that. But in that, I wanted to help other people do it, because I would go on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. It barely existed when
yeah,
I started the company, but I was so I wanted to make a difference in a healthy and positive way using goals and journaling and something that was wholesome. Our brand
yeah,
was super wholesome. just inspirational. And I think it was different than anything else out there. There was no booty shots on our Instagram. There were no curse words. It was all positive and healthy. And I think it stood out in a market that, in the fitness industry anyway, it's like a $40 billion market. And it can get kind of trashy sometimes.
Yeah, and look, let's be honest, we've got a far more educated and far more cynical consumer these days too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, everyone's sick of seeing all the, as a friend of mine said, typical Instagrammable bullshit
Yeah.
that is just
Exactly.
meaningless. So yeah, no, that's cool. I can see really where your passion comes from. There's,
Yeah. I
usually a
really
cause that
did.
has deep meaning.
I think that was part of the hard part of selling it. And I know we'll get there, but part of the hard part of selling it was, it become, as an entrepreneur, it can become your identity, but it had become my friends. It had
Yeah.
become my social platform. It had been how I connected and related to people. It had become so much because it was me, right? It was me living and breathing the brand. And so, we can talk about this, but after you sell, you're like, okay, well, what now? So it was challenging in the beginning even though I was very happy, it was a very wonderful exit for me. There was part of me that's like, well, now what? I don't have this
Yeah.
anymore. So,
Yeah, yeah, and such a common experience for entrepreneurs,
oh,
which
yeah.
it's really, really, certainly goes to the heart of a lot of what we talk about with exit advisory. Our core business is this, understanding your business as the asset, and how do you manage that, and think about what you want for it.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier when we first started that you didn't ever imagine selling or exiting and all that sort of stuff. Like, where did that start to change? Where did exiting
Yeah.
come into your thinking?
Well, it was interesting. So I mentioned we were in the fitness aisle at Target. We did multiple end caps, at the holidays and New Year's and stuff. And we had quite a few. I think we had 3 SKUs in Target at the time. And I wanted over in the journal aisle, because what I was seeing was the journal aisle got a lot more traction. Target at the time was decreasing their footprint of the fitness aisle because everything was going online. And so I
Yeah.
saw that as this aisle is going to be shrinking, and I'm, one of the top selling products, but if you start comparing me to some of the top selling items in that aisle, am I going to last? And so I really wanted to be dual located. So I wanted to be in the journal aisle. I talked to the journal buyer, and they said, we work with like 3 companies. They're all journal distributors. There's 3 main companies. I'm like, great. Who are they? So I reached out to all 3 of them. I had conversations with 2 and ended up choosing the one I wanted to go with. So we created a licensed product for them, and the company name
Okay.
was CR Gibson. It was a company owned by CSS Industries, and they had a ton of journals in that aisle. And so I created one, and lo and behold, it was, I think, the number 2 top selling item in the aisle. And that item was doing over 2 million a year and I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a lot of
Yeah.
journals. And so what happened was our contract came to expire, and I wasn't going to renew. Not to be spiteful or anything, but I was like, well, we have a top selling item. I wonder if the journal buyer will let me take it direct.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the CEO calls me and says, hey, have you ever thought of selling your business? He liked all of our products, the entire brand. Um, and so it was one of those, huh? I thought he was calling to say, like, well, here's why we need to renew and we'll negotiate and blah, blah, blah. And so it was a really big moment. And so I remember the conversations went pretty quickly. The sales process takes forever. But, when I got my LOI from them, I about passed out just from, I'll tell you, Simon, I never paid myself really well in this business. I never
Yep.
made 6 figures in this business.
Okay.
I always took really good care of my employees because I knew I couldn't do it without them. And I'm not saying that because I'm a martyr. I knew if I don't have them, I can't grow this. But I
Yep.
never imagined someone coming along and wanting to write a check for my business. And so, yeah, that
Yeah,
was
right.
in 2017, and the
Yep.
sale took about a little over a year.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, and a year, I was going to ask you how long did that
Yeah.
process take? And that's even with them sort of tapping you on the shoulder, sort of, so to speak. It's,
Yeah.
if you're obviously going out to the market and creating a process and trying to find lots of buyers and pre-screen them and
Oh, yeah. That's
you
got
can
to
expect it to
take.
take.
I will say I was in a spot where I didn't need to sell, nor had I thought about selling. So it's the perfect position to be in as far as I don't know. I guess if it doesn't go through, I'm doing fine. We had just
Yeah.
landed CVS 9,000 stores, and they had not yet landed placement in CVS in that aisle. And so I think part of it too was they wanted to buy retail space
Yeah.
by acquiring the products, because once they have a foot in the door, then they can get in. And by acquiring our retail space, they also acquired our terms with these retailers. They acquired a lot of the shelf space, all the nuts and bolts of those deals. And so it was something that I think was attractive to them. And for me at the time, we went back and forth. Of course, it's a game. I remember sitting at a bar one time with the CEO, and he's like, "Well, if it doesn't happen this year, maybe next year." And I'm like, "Yep, if it doesn't happen this year, maybe next year." Like, I'm not gonna. And I know and respect him, and he's a great guy, and I appreciate that he believed in my business. But I really wasn't in a position of I need to sell. That
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
there were thoughts of the 5, 6, 7 years prior when I would be crying like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard.
Yeah.
Um, I realized this was my shot. I
Yeah.
realized it was an offer that I would probably never see again. Maybe I would, but I also realized 10 years in, I was like, I wonder what else I can do. I was just
Yeah. Yeah.
curious what else is in me. Because my fear as an entrepreneur was I was just going to be this one hit wonder. Maybe I was just lucky. And I think I look back and I'm like, no, I think that's the evil voices in your head that tell you, oh, maybe, I don't know, could you do it again? Um, I know I could, but would I
Yeah.
want to? It's
Yeah.
a grind, and like I said, my husband owns his own company, so I get the joys of that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all that said, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think in a way it was forcing me to look at my life and be like, okay, you've done this for 10 years. And I was, to be honest with you, in the everyday business of it, Simon, I was kind of bored. I loved
Yeah.
sales. I loved the win. I loved the thrill. But when I went to sell the business, it was actually really fun. All the due diligence, doing all the financials, getting all that, like working with the attorneys and my business advisors at the time. That was fun. That was challenging because it was something new and different. And I knew, you know what, that's where I know that I'm kind of cut out to do something next. Not
Yeah.
necessarily, had to sell, but this is interesting for me.
Yeah. I love that. I think what you've described there is once again. I'm giving you another entrepreneurial tick here. Oh, found a challenge. This is tickling
Yes.
that part of my brain.
Yes,
This is
yes.
exciting. I love that. Can I ask? I don't know if you can share what the
Yeah.
valuation or what the price was, but could you tell us how they came up with their number? Like, was it a multiple of
Yeah.
EBITDA or was it some other method?
Yeah, it was 5 times earnings, which is pretty common in the consumer goods space. It's
Yep.
nothing compared to like these SaaS companies now. Their valuations are
Yeah.
like through the roof. But it was 5 times earnings at the time, and it was a really fair offer. I felt like for what we were doing in
Yeah.
revenue. We had top retailers were Target. Amazon was actually, whenever we sold, Amazon was actually our number one retailer,
Yeah. Yeah.
with Target, Walgreens, and CVS being next.
Nice. Well, a small little technical question, if I could, just because I know this will probably be going through the minds of some of the listeners. Um, Without getting into the detail, did you have to make any adjustments for your salary in the final deal? Like, did they say, well, you haven't been paying yourself enough and we need to allow for that or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, we made it where it was, which made it better for me, right? Because there was a price. It was an asset sale,
Yep.
and then a position, and all my employees got jobs as well, which was important to
Awesome.
me. There's more on that later, but
Yeah.
um, but but that said, they provided me with a salary that was equal to their VP positions in the
Yep.
company, which was way more than I had ever paid myself.
Yep.
But it's so funny how that it didn't. I guess whenever you're used to running a business, you're like, okay, that's nice. The nicest part about selling it was like, oh my gosh, you mean I don't have to worry about payroll? Okay. But
Yeah.
I would say all the niceties were definitely overshadowed by the fact that I had lost creative control. I had
Yeah.
lost,
Yeah.
when a big, so they're a publicly traded company and huge. And, we got swallowed up in it, and which was fine. But I was, I think, led to believe that I would have a lot more input. Say, I tried to negotiate, okay, well, how much are you going to allocate towards marketing? Because we do a ton of marketing. Oh, no, don't worry. We'll give you plenty of budget for that. They didn't give us plenty of budget for that. And so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
watching a big company swallow up a small brand can be quite disheartening, which is, why I'm obviously glad that it's kind of in my past. I've kind of had to like let go of that brand, so to speak, but I stayed on with the acquiring company for about a year.
yep.
And then everybody wants to know what I did next. I took a lot of time off and decided I was going to go live in Italy for 6 months. I was
Oh,
incredible. I
lovely.
know. I was incredibly single, in a good way, and I just sold my business and was kind of bored walking at the beach every day. And at the time, let's see, 39, I guess I was at the time, was too young to retire in my mind. So I'm going to go travel. And then COVID hit. So
Yeah.
I was not able to go to Italy, but instead ended up meeting a wonderful man from my hometown, actually, moving
Wow.
back to Colorado and getting married at the age of 41 and having a baby at 42. So it has been a whirlwind since
Awesome.
then. But, had I never sold that company, I look back now, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have even been open to the idea of, like, I wouldn't have left Newport Beach and my company for a guy, you know? But I was in this place where I was like, oh, like, I'm kind of
Yeah.
just whatever's next. So it's been really cool to watch how the thing that at first was really, really hard for my identity, like, who am I now, has helped me find a whole new version of myself,
Yeah.
wife, mom, stepmom, that I never even knew existed outside of Angela, the entrepreneur.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. As a father myself, I know having kids. I mean, they're the most amazing thing, the most frustrating thing, the most challenging thing, the most beautiful thing, the most, like
Yeah,
it's such a it's a different journey that changes you as a person,
yeah,
I think, and
it really
that's a good thing,
does.
right?
Yeah, I mean, and I think I'm so grateful that I'm doing this later in life. I know a lot of people were like, "Whoa, you're 42 having a baby." I'm like, "Yeah, and I'm healthy and it's going to be fine." And
Yeah.
thank God we had a very healthy baby girl, very happy baby girl. But gosh, you know what? I get to enjoy her in a way that I wouldn't at 20, 25, 30. Running a business, I have the luxury, I call it that because it's true, to stay home with her. I do some other things part time because I'm a very active person. And oh my gosh, my daughter is so busy all the time. She's squawking right now. Like, I don't know where she gets it from. But it's so fun to be able to get to spend that time with her, that I think, had I been a young mom, and everybody has a different journey. I just did the career
Yeah.
thing first. And I also know that I can do both, but she's my priority. Always is my priority at this point in my life.
Yeah. Ah, that's awesome, and congratulations.
Thank you.
It's what a wonderful journey.
It's been wild.
Yeah. And other than the mum project and that part of your
Yeah,
life, is there
mom
any other
project.
sort of business things that you're working on at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah. So pretty early on, when I met my husband, the reason he had reached out to me was, I was an entrepreneur and he had watched a podcast and wanted to talk more. And I'm like, do you want to know about my business, or do you think I'm cute? That kind of thing. And pretty soon he realized we liked each other, but I loved that he was an entrepreneur. He had run his own software company. He's very successful. And he had a software company in the equine space. And I grew up riding horses and all that. And so early on, I was like, his branding and marketing, I was like, oh gosh, I need to get my hands on this business. And so, I started just dabbling in it just because I wanted something fun to do. And my skills were so opposite of his that you mentioned you work with your wife. I work very part-time, but I help my husband with his company and love it. It's a
Yeah.
company and a passion project that I love it. I love our team. It's so different. It's a SaaS company. It's so completely different from tracking inventory and selling products. And
Yeah.
then also, My husband's company actually got accepted into these local incubator here in Colorado Springs. And so I think he knew I was bored. I didn't have a job or anything. And he's like, hey, you need to come meet these people here. They're your people. And sure enough, it's called Exponential Impact. And so his company went through the program. And through that, I met the founder of it. And now I'm a strategic advisor and a mentor for the program. So as I mentioned, like
Nice.
tomorrow night, I'll be speaking. We focus a lot on these startups that they're like very much at the very beginning stages onto companies that are, raising money. And so it's really fun for me to get, like I said, these are my people. So I've really loved working, we call it XI, but I love working at XI. I work there 1 day a week. I go into the office and I mean, I literally work like 5 or 6 hours a week, but I love it. And I also volunteer my time with them as well. And
Yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
really important to give back. And where I love giving back is startups and entrepreneurs and things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did try starting like a consulting company, but I learned I do not like consulting that much. I like being in it. Like I don't want to work with you for 2 months and then like, oh gosh, everything we did that did not work, it's a control thing, right, Simon? If I'm in it, I want to know it's going to be successful. If my name is going to be attached to it, so I'm
Yeah.
loving these two projects I'm involved in now. Sometimes people ask me to do consulting, and I just politely say I'm raising my 9-month-old baby and I'm happy as can be. So
Yeah. That's
it's a
awesome.
really good
Well,
balance.
yeah. Well, I think once you've been through that cycle, you've started it, you built it, you've nurtured it, grown it, exited it. The way you can add value is through your wisdom and experience and all those sort of things. It's not about you putting in more hours to grind the hard work. It's
Yeah.
about helping people make some of those important decisions that maybe even the make or break of their future. So,
Yeah.
look,
I do love that. And it's so interesting because, at first I was a little intimidated because most of the companies that go through the accelerator are high tech. And I was like, oh gosh, like I had a product company. I don't know how I can be of use to them. But lo and behold, I found out technologists are not always marketers. And they don't think, and because I would say marketing, branding, just the look and the feel and the essence of
yeah,
a company is what excites me. Um,
yep,
and I think it's just part of my talent to like see those kind of things. And so I love taking companies and just seeing things, and in a 30-minute conversation, either, giving them an idea that could save them a ton of money, or telling them that's absolutely not going to work, don't do it. Or, did you check the patent or the trademark on that? Because I'm pretty sure that's another company. Oh no, So it's just those conversations where I always say, like, entrepreneurship, we need therapists, because that's why you need
yeah,
other entrepreneurs. Because, it really is lonely a lot of times.
yeah.
Um,
That's a really good point. And one of the things that I had a friend and a mentor tell me when I was, well, probably about 15 years ago. But you've got to be careful who you take advice from sometimes. And I think,
yeah.
as entrepreneurs, you want to be mindful. I mean, don't get me wrong, you might get legal advice from a lawyer, stuff like that. But like, be careful if you're getting advice from people who haven't walked the path themselves. Because at the end of the day, unless they've had a few sleepless nights and not sure if their own business was going to survive and whether they were going to lose it all, they probably don't necessarily know what you're going through. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, I think that side of things, yeah, I think that's really important anyway. And that's that whole entrepreneurial community, right? Is that others are going through similar
Yeah.
things.
This is why, Simon, I'm so annoyed by this world of everyone's a coach.
Oh God, yeah, I know.
Because people wanted me to coach them, and I'm like, because I'm not, and I'm not putting those people down. But in my opinion, like, okay, you're coaching me on how to build a 7-figure business. How did you build a 7-figure business? You built a 7-figure business by selling other people on coaching to sell them a 7-figure business. Like, what did you create other than
Yes.
selling hype? And I have so many, it was part of what I love is talking to other entrepreneurs who have made exits and realize what a small group of people and how few people can relate. I was
Yeah.
talking to a gentleman here in the Springs who he made a huge exit.
Yeah.
Nicest guy you ever met. Um, we're sitting there and just commiserating. because he's like, you know how many people don't understand, like, when they see you made an exit, but then you're like kind of sort of depressed. Like you
Yeah.
kind of don't like know what to do next, but no one feels sorry for you because they think you're just like bathing in money. And he's like, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not why I did it. And that like that doesn't bring happiness. And I think what's hard for entrepreneurs who make an exit, and I'm sure you run into this all the time because this is what you do for a living, is there really is this need, in my opinion, for maybe that's what you do. I don't know, but what's next? What's after the exit?
Yeah.
Who are you
Yeah.
now that you sold your business? Because I think that there's this identity crisis.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, I would think, oh, well, I shouldn't have had my identity be so much my business. I believe that you have to have your identity be your business in order to be successful, at least in the short term. Um,
Yeah.
Part of
I,
why. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I totally get it, and I agree. At the end of the day, you have to put some part of you into that business for
Yeah.
it to get past all those challenges. And yeah, look, sure, if you scale it enough, and we've had a number of guests on the show that have had big exits. The gentleman I just got off the phone, the previous episode, he sold his business for $43 million. I'm like, yeah. By the time you're getting to 100 staff, like, yeah, sure, it ceases to be about you and your personality.
Yes.
Then,
Yeah.
it's well, if it is still about your personality, you probably need to look at yourself, and deal with that
Yeah.
issue, because that's
That's a whole other
probably
issue.
not healthy. But
Yes.
yeah, but you do scale beyond the owners. But I agree with you. If you want to, nobody gets to that point without doing the hard grind and building it to the
Yeah.
7 and even 8 figures before the business is big enough to do that.
Yeah. And
So
that quote, it's business, it's not personal. I'm like, this is the most personal thing in the world. It's
yeah,
how I literally put food on the
yeah,
table. And
yeah,
yeah, it's been quite the journey since I sold it. And I would say if you would have talked to me a few years after selling it, I still would have been trying to tell you what I was doing. I had a website and I'm going to do consulting and here's how you can work with me and here's my rates, and it was me still trying to feel relevant. And
yes,
I think becoming a mother made me realize that that's the most relevant I ever need to be, is to be her mom. And I don't have
totally,
anything left to prove. And anything else I do professionally or even personally beyond being a mother, that's just gravy. And I
yeah,
feel so fortunate to be in that place because, Simon, I was not in that place for first few years. It was
yeah,
really tough. I was like, oh, I'm going to write a book because then maybe I'm important. And then, oh, I'm going to start another business because, I better be able to do it again. Or I'm going to go travel to Italy because that sounds really cool. I didn't know what that was going to fill that void. But I was trying everything. But lo and
yep,
behold, COVID, and then now
yeah,
this.
yeah. And it's that simple essence of knowing now that you are enough.
Yeah.
You've
Oh
done enough.
gosh.
It doesn't matter anymore. Like, it's
That.
and I think too, as you're starting to do clearly, in terms of mentoring other people or starting to give back and do different things, you can do that from a very balanced
Yeah.
place. And it's just becomes more about, how do I really add value? And I think
Yes.
too, you certainly, I can tell from just talking to you, you have that sort of humility to go, well, actually, if I don't have the answer, then I don't need to try to have the answer either. It's
No,
not
but I
that's
probably
not
know someone who
like
does because I know really cool people.
totally.
Like, right? I always say, like, I'm not that important, but I know really important people.
Yeah.
You said something. I was just having a conversation yesterday at lunch, and a mentor and friend of mine, and he said, someone turned to him and said, you're enough. And he was just like, oh my gosh. And so he has that word written on, like, in his office or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. One of my board members told me, Angela, entrepreneurs are some of those insecure people you will ever find because we're always trying to prove we're good enough. And I'm like, oh
Yep.
man, that's deep. That's therapy deep. But it's true,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's really interesting. And I think entrepreneurship as a whole is it's such a very few people have it in them. I would say that.
Yeah.
And I don't say that because I'm saying I'm amazing. I'm saying I was stupid enough to try it and I was strong enough to hold on. And
Yep.
that would be my tip for most people out there is perseverance. And it's such
Yeah.
an overused word because most people say passion. And I'm like, bah. Passion, great. But if you do not keep going, and there's there's wisdom, right? You want to have advisors that are like, man, you better hang up your hat. This is not going in the right path. You've lost a ton of money. Nobody's buying your stuff.
Yeah.
But when the going gets tough, and it's just hard, and you are
Yeah.
working weekends and 80-hour weeks and making 40,000, like your friend said, um, can you keep going? Do you have it in
Yeah.
you? You're gonna have to white knuckle it a lot.
Yep.
And I truly believe if you can, that hard work pays off. Not all the time. And I think that's why I sold. I was like, you know what? Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I could hold on and maybe make more money, but why? What am I trying to
Yeah.
prove? Like sometimes it's like, you know what? It's I put 10 years of my life into this. I got to cash out and then go live another version of myself and maybe another one after that and another one after that. Sometimes I think knowing when to let go is a skill.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'd say to anybody who's listening to this and is experiencing those harder challenges too, don't ever be afraid of reinventing yourself. But
Yeah.
as you're going through some of these challenges too, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
The things we say to ourselves and the
Yeah.
language we even use, and it's no, I'm guilty of it. I think we're all
Yeah.
guilty of it. But I just,
I probably did it
geez, the
on the
one thing,
podcast, Simon. I'm like, I'm harsh. I'm like, but on myself, right? That's a
yeah,
driver
yeah,
personality. But you're right. There is a kindness. And I think you said something, or I read it on your podcast somewhere about celebrating the wins,
yeah,
and I think that is the hardest thing as an entrepreneur because the minute you land target, okay, are we in all stores? Okay, great. Well, so we'll get CVS, but that's only 2,500 stores, but I want to be in all 9,000. And then, okay, well,
yeah,
Walgreens has 7,000, so we could get that. And then they're acquiring, like, it's just never enough. And that is the personality of someone that is going to be that driver and that achiever. Um,
yeah,
but I would say we did a good job of celebrating the wins along the way. I loved my team. I was so proud of what we did. We had a lot of fun. And so
yeah.
we would celebrate a lot. As
Ah,
far
that's
as, this little team, I mean, to think about, the size of business that we grew with only 6 people was pretty impressive. So I was very
yeah,
proud of that. So I always wanted them to know how much they were a part of what we did. It was not just me. Even
yeah,
my friend, we'd go into Target and she's like, look at you, and I'm like, look at me, like you literally did the design on it. Like it's amazing. I wanted them to all feel that sense of ownership and part of our
yeah.
success.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to have a. I mean, purpose is another one of those words that probably gets a little bit overused, but it's, I actually think a sense of purpose is typically about working on something that's actually bigger than yourself and it has
Yes,
meaning. And,
yes,
if you feel like you've contributed to something special, like that you own that in your
yeah.
heart of hearts. That's with you for the rest of your life. And it's,
Absolutely. And I think that's part of how you get, one of the talks that we're giving at XI is on how to recruit employees to a risky venture, and it's like if the founder is not sold out for it and has that purpose of doing something bigger than themselves, why would anyone want to come work for you, let alone why would anyone want to buy it? Right. So you
for
really
sure.
have to be sold out for that. And
For
I think that's
sure.
how you attract and retain really good people.
Yeah. Well, and there's another 3 hours of us talking about culture, but because we could no doubt do that. But it's yeah, Angela, thank you so much for coming on the show. Like I've
Yeah.
loved hearing your story, and I've just loved chatting to you. It's somebody who's walked the path and has had all the ups and downs, and done a few loops on the merry-go-round. Right, like
Oh,
it's wonderful, and I just I'm really appreciate. I know people listening to this will just get so much from
thank
hearing from your
you.
experience. So
Thank you.
so
I'm
thanks for making the
so,
time.
yeah, I had to dust off my stuff and be like, I haven't done a podcast in a while since I had my baby. So I was excited to talk to you, and obviously love your podcast. So I'm excited to be on here, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, look, my absolute pleasure. Are you happy for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Does LinkedIn work? What's the best method for people
LinkedIn,
to?
yeah. So my maiden name was Angela Mater, but now I've got married, so it's Hartshorn. And my website's just angelamater.com, Mader. And
Cool.
yeah, I'm happy to have people reach out to me. I'm always, although it sounded like I wasn't in the beginning, but I have a feeling your listeners are my people.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. So awesome. Well, look, I'm going to put those links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you once again. Really, really appreciate you making the time. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you, Simon.
Awesome. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did. If you would like to talk to somebody about your journey, if you're having those ups and downs, if you want to understand how to plan for an exit like this, or you just want to know what your business is worth, please feel free to reach out to us at exitadvisory.com.au. One of our team members will be very happy to jump on a call and just have a chat if that's what you need. Thanks for your time and join us on the next episode.